My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called Fate, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your fate. Hey, everybody. Quick note before we start this episode. We will not see Dr. Kirkwood on camera. So if you're watching this from YouTube, you're only going to see me. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties and his camera would not work with the platform. I do mention it in the show, but I just want it to be known from the top that you're only going to see me on camera today, gang. Number two, little note, is the sound quality on this episode is wonky at some points while I'm talking. I didn't love it in the edit, but it certainly wasn't so bad that I was not going to release the episode. I think our conversation is worthy of putting out there, and I hope you enjoy the show. So here we go. Our purpose-driven God with Dr. Kirkwood, and I will see you on the other side. Welcome to your fate, gang. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of Fate. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I am bringing you Dr. Bo Kirkwood. He has a book out called Our Purpose-Driven God. We're here to talk all about it. We're talking intelligent design today, gang. I'm very interested to hear all your perspectives. Dr. Kirkwood, welcome to your fate, my friend. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts on your book. I'm very interested. I actually read the book. So it was, thankfully, I have a degree in animal behavior and neurobiology, and I had some background, some foundation a little bit in the biological sciences and the basic physics and the Darwinism and all of the different type of modalities of the science that you go into in this book. It was beneficial for me to have at least a little bit of knowledge in the biological sciences to kind of navigate, and be familiar with the concepts that you were trying to talk about, which was perfect for me. It aligned. It was a great read. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's talk about your foundations in religion. What denomination did you grow up in within your family?
I grew up really in a non-denominational setting. So I was not part of a denomination per se. We called ourselves Christians, and we didn't use any other terms like Baptist or Lutheran or whatnot. I was non-denominational, and I personally became a Christian at a pretty early age, at age 16. And so I have been a Christian since that point in time.
You know what is fascinating? I actually grew up, just to give full disclosure on my end of the story when it comes to religion. I grew up Church of Christ, which we called ourselves non-denominational. And we said that we just went to, for the Bible, and I grew up going to church 3 times a week. Now, it never took for me, for some reason, as much as my parents tried, I found myself never aligning emotionally, physically, mentally with the church. It may have been the church that I was brought up in. Who knows? But I ended up moving away and moving into science, and honestly was an atheist up until I was 5-6 years ago, and I had a health crisis, and I started to look into other ways to heal, and it led me to energy healing, and it led me to spirituality, and then it led me to asking questions. And now I've been on this podcast asking questions, getting perspectives, figuring out what the nature of reality is. And I am open and learning the many ways that you can navigate a new spiritual way of being. But it's interesting that you said that you were non-denominational, because I don't hear a lot of people call themselves that, but I myself was brought up in a family where we considered ourselves non-denominational.
You obviously know what
Yeah.
that term means. Most people do. And in fact, I did grow up in the Church of Christ, but it was it was, yeah, it was, we were not non-denominational. We were independent. Our church did not answer to anybody else. And the subsequent churches I've been a member of have all been non-denominational. So yeah, that's where I grew up in. Interesting.
Amazing. I can't believe we have that in common. That's great.
How about that?
That informs so much about you and I. I mean, I feel like I know you now. Why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about your book? What prompted you to write this book, and what was the intention behind it?
Okay, that's a fair question. There's a purpose in my book, The Purpose-Driven God. And really, if you look at the bottom line as to why I wrote it, it's to give an answer to the hope that's in me. Okay. Peter says in his epistle that's what, as a Christian, we should be able to do that. When somebody asks me why I believe what I believe as a Christian, or anybody else for that matter, we should be able to give an answer to that. This book, to me, is an answer to that. And if I was trying to persuade someone, the first thing I would try to do is show that there's evidence all around in our universe that there's design behind it. The evidence is abounding that the earth and the universe and everything that we have around us is there by exquisite design. And in fact, science has functioned that way from its inception. When scientists do work, they try to look at how things work. What's the purpose in X, Y, or Z? That's the way we look, and that implies design. For example, my background as a doctor. When we look at the body, we want to know how the heart works. What's the purpose of the kidneys? What's the purpose of the appendix? On and on and on. Sometimes early on, it was sometimes difficult to figure out what a specific organ's purpose was. But now we've mapped out all the organs and we know they all have purpose on the cellular level. In the biological world, when you look inside a cell and you see all of those organelles, what do scientists want to know about all those organelles? What's their purpose? For example, the mitochondria. What does the mitochondria do? The mitochondria is where energy is produced. Your background knows all that. So when I look at the world, I see purpose. The materialist, on the other hand, doesn't see purpose. The naturalist, if there's different words for them, the science, those of scientism, they wanted to describe the world as from a pure materialistic point of view and not from a purposeful point of view. And so as a result of that, their philosophy, their worldview, we like to call it, their worldview is going to be quite different than the theist worldview. They're not going to see life as having any purpose. It's all here by chance and random chance with no intelligence behind it. And that when we die, we're all made of stardust, and that's where we're going to go back to, is stardust after our death. Whereas the theist is going to look for purpose in life. And we're going to see that there is accountability to our life because we believe that there is something after this life. So the reason for writing my book is to try to give an answer to those things that I believe cause me to be a Christian and believe what I believe. And it's not blind faith like a lot of people think. People look at Christians and they say, well, you just have a blind faith. You believe in what you believe because you have faith and faith only. Well, I don't believe that that's a proper answer to what Peter asked us to do. I think we have to have evidence. It's not just based upon how my heart feels or what I feel personally. I have to have evidence. And although I grew up in the church, like every young person as we got older, and especially when we went to places of higher education, college, and we started getting exposed to things that we weren't exposed to when we were younger, it brought up questions. And so I started asking those questions and trying to discern, well, is science wrong? Is religion wrong? Can you be a scientist and be religious too? All those questions came about. And One of the things that kind of changed my perspective, for example, on Darwinism, just as an example, I was taking a course called Population Genetics and Evolution. That was the name of the course. I wanted to learn about evolution, population genetics, and so forth. At the very beginning of the course, this PhD credentialed professor of genetics said the general theory of Darwin should be in a philosophy class, not a science class, because there was no hard, fast scientific evidence. I would have to say that was the first time that I had ever heard that from someone with those kind of credentials. And then in the late 80s, the intelligent design movement started with people like Michael Denton, and then eventually Stephen Meyer and Michael Behe and Douglas Axe, and on and on and on. And we started to have really a scientific basis for believing in an intelligent design, not just a faith-based. And so the purpose of this book is to present the science, and I understand it is a little bit science-y in the beginning, but I think most people have enough background. If they took biology in high school, that's probably enough background to understand what I'm saying. And if it's too sciencey for Sam, I apologize for that. But I think it had to be.
No, I think that it is. It has a nice grounding in science with the principles, and you align that well with the intelligent design premise. But I don't think it is so above and beyond somebody's ability to read and still understand it. If you don't have a degree in biological sciences or not familiar with scientific theories or anything, it's not something that is going to preclude you from being able to understand the book. So you did a good dance between the two, for sure. Nevertheless, I was grateful that at least when I was reading it, I haven't been used any of my science brain for decades now. I haven't been in that world in a long time, but at least I can go back into the Rolodex and be like, oh yeah, I remember this. Oh yeah. I mean, even giving on my perspective, coming up in the church and becoming an atheism, science is something that I relied heavily on. And I did end up becoming somebody that was, in my worldview, based on all the science that I had ingested and learned about through my years of education, I kind of felt like this was my worldview. That the earth was a self-contained, almost petri dish that was perfectly aligned to promote life. And we were like trees. We were born, we grew up, and we would die, and we would go back to the earth. And that was the natural, normal cycle of life. I used to believe very much in Darwinism and evolution. And it has been interesting how I have changed my views, my perspective. I now kind of believe in microevolution. For instance, I do believe that animals still have the ability to mutate their genes enough to adapt to a certain environment. I do believe that we adapt, but it's hard.
Well, I believe that too.
Yeah, that I can still buy into that. The micro evolution that occurs just through adapting to our new environment. But the macro evolution of us crawling out of the ocean and going through various iterations until we are up walking hominid that you see today. I don't believe that evolution is that. I don't believe in that kind of evolution whatsoever anymore, which is huge for me. But
and there's a reason you don't believe in it, I bet. And I believe it's because you don't see the evidence for it. And that's my belief as well. There's just no evidence. So now the evolutionists will try to confuse the picture with micro and macro evolution. Yes. Microevolution is adaptation. I really know of no scientist that doesn't believe in microevolution. Yes. But the fossil evidence is the place where the evolutionists fall down when it comes to macroevolution. There's very few really transitional forms. And when you ask in transitional forms, is that transition from one species or kind to another kind? That's what I mean by transitional forms. And when you ask the evolutionists to show you examples of transitional forms in the fossil records, they almost always go back to adaptation or microevolution. So I need the fossil evidence, and I don't see it. It is scant at best. There's a few examples. They want to use the horse, they want to use the whale, but if you really delve into the evidence for that evolution within the whale and the horse, is flawed. There's a lot of flaws involved, but that's just two species. There should be transitional breaks all throughout the animal and plant phyla. And another good example of that is the Cambrian explosion, which is the lowest geologic column that we have, or right at the bottom where life really appears. Before that, the life was minuscule. And then all of a sudden, we see 23 phyla of animals that are quite different. Where are the intermediates? There's no intermediates.
I agree. And I do believe that science has a problem on its hands as far as its inability to acknowledge other ulterior possibilities. And even people within the science community are discouraged to such a level because you will lose your college professorship. You will lose your ability to teach. You will lose your ability to write and get grants if you were to say that Darwinism is not a real thing or that is not settled science. Because in the world of science still today, you would find that most people have to at least verbally say, oh, no, that's settled science. Evolution is a thing. It is absolutely settled. And it's not settled at all.
Well, you're exactly right. And that's not a theoretical thing you're talking about. There's been many examples of people that have lost tenure and professorship just by even remotely entertaining the concept of intelligent design. But I will say this, after years of work by the intelligent design community, there's beginning to be a little bit of crack in that. And they are starting to see some debates and some people that are realizing just because they don't believe like we believe doesn't mean we shouldn't listen to them. But if you try to bring up intelligent design in most academic settings, you're going to be just laughed at as a young creationist and be put off, and you will get no traction whatsoever. So an example, a man like James Tour, who's a professor at Rice University here in Houston, he will not really align himself with the intelligent design community, but not because he doesn't necessarily believe it, because he really does, but he needs to stay away from the fray, so to speak. And he wants to look at the origins of life experiments from a purely scientific standpoint. So he'll stay out of that fray to a little bit because of that. But I think it's beginning to change. I sure hope so.
I mean, I sure hope so too, because, you know, even if you look back throughout history of humankind, there has always been scientists that feel like they have had it all figured out at that point in the game. And yet we come to find that we were wrong. We didn't have the correct information. We used to believe all kinds of different things. And I think that we're still in the, for lack of a better term, evolution of figuring out the nature of our reality, the nature of humanity, the nature of how things work. I think it's still all a lot of unknowns. And I think that people need to start having more of an open mind to different possibilities that may or may not be settled science in today's world, because I just don't think that is the be all end all of,
I totally agree with you.
Of where we need to be thinking. Intelligent people change their minds when they get new information. And it just seems like the scientific community is unwilling to evolve on much of what we've already claimed as settled science. And I just think that's a terrible way to handle science in general.
Science has and always will be provisional. It just will be. You're exactly right. You know, scientists used to believe that the Earth was the center of the solar system. We know that's not true anymore. Only someone really spacey and ignorant would deny that. But yet it was more or less settled science centuries ago. And I could give example out of example. So for scientists that latch on to Darwin dogma so stringently and say it's the only possibility, even if there is another, even if intelligent design is not the right one, to say that Darwin's the only one is putting blinders on and ignoring the vast amount of evidence that is refuting neo-Darwinism. And it's beginning to mount up. So you're right. Scientists needs to be open to new ideas. It shouldn't be provisional, because I promise you there are things right now that you and I believe that scientists teaches that will be refuted, maybe not in our lifetime, but will be later on.
I
That's just the way it
guarantee
is.
it. I guarantee it. And, you know, you're right. It may not come in our lifetimes. Let's face it, things are slow to change within the human ether out there. It just is. I think people become attached to all kinds of dogma, and I think science can be a form of dogma in itself, because it becomes rigid and unable to accept ulterior possibilities, just as you had just said. And you and I align on a lot. We don't align on everything, I will be honest with that, but I certainly appreciate and am open to your perspective. I certainly would never say that. I think one of the things that I have learned through going through a health crisis and having to kind of dig myself out of a pit of despair, so to speak, is you do become more open-minded and more willing and more aware that maybe you don't have it all figured out. And I do think that there's a lot about human life that we don't have it figured out. I think that there's a strong possibility that humans on this planet don't know their full history. I feel like there's a lot of pieces of the pie that are missing. I believe I have trouble with the Bible. I have trouble with the fact that there are ancient texts that predate the Bible that speak of a story that's very similar. I'm not a fan of how the Christian Crusades went and pretty much killed off anybody who didn't think the way they did. I don't love that. I don't love that there's such a hierarchy in the church, and that I am not able to get to God unless I go through a priest, an elder, a pastor, that they know more, that they're closer to God. I don't love that. I don't love
I don't either.
Good. We align on more than we think.
I'm agreeing with you so far.
I don't love the lack of feminine divine energy in the church. I believe that there should be more divine feminine. I believe that we are the nurturers, the creators, that we are just as spiritually powerful as any man out there on the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't love that about the church. And I don't love the overall lack of open-mindedness, even within the church. As much as we will talk about scientism and being closed and being unopen to ulterior ways of thinking, I would say the same thing to the church or organized religion. In particular, there's a myriad of different religions out there. There's many denominations. There's Mormonism, there's Muslims, there's Jews, there's all kinds of different religions out there that have their beliefs, that think that they're right, that think that they're on the right side, that see the other side as being sometimes enemies, sometimes ill-informed, sometimes wrong. But I find that is a problem with religion, that there is a lack of acceptance to see anybody else's perspective as far as their belief systems and how it's structured. And sometimes I feel like religion was brought here to divide us, because there seems to be a lot of division and distrust and lack of being able to see your fellow man as your brethren, love thy neighbor, and on one side, and then it's, if you're not with me, you're against me on the other side. And I think that religion is starting to feel very dangerous almost in a way, because people are so heightened and fearful that their religion is under attack, that their religion is not going to be accepted, that it's going to go away, that their rights are going to be taken away. It's a very highly tinderbox kind of topic in today's world, and that gives me pause about religion.
Well, I think you're right, but I think the problem is the word religion. I think the word religion has been adulterated. Okay, A lot of things can be called religious. There's no one that's going to deny that there have been atrocities committed in the name of a religion, both Christian, both Jewish, both Muslim. I'm sure probably Hindu as well. I don't know, but that's not true religion. The people have adulterated the religion, and the bottom line in Christianity is what? Love your neighbor as yourself. Who is against that? Tell me who is against that, because if they're against that, then I've got no answers for them. And yet that's what, and other religions have that same ethic as well, to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, who's your neighbor? It's not just people that agree with you. That's not your neighbor. And in fact, Jesus even demonstrated that in the parable of the Good Samaritan. The Samaritan was not Jewish, yet he was the neighbor in that story. He was the one helping out the destitute individual in that story. So true religion does that. But have atrocities been performed in the name of religion? Absolutely. I mean, the Crusades and everything else for that matter. But I would argue this. There's been a whole lot more deaths that have occurred from materialism than in religion. It's not even 100%. Close. It's not even close. And I mentioned that in my book. Just go back to the 20th century and see the number of people that fell under Nazi Germany, under Stalin's Russia, under Mao's Chinese government. It's not even comparable.
No, I agree. And even I believe, and I'm not that up on my World War II Nazism history, but even I believe they were doing things in the name of God. They have some sort of Christian religion within their dogma that they were saying to their people. They it wasn't all materialism. There was a God component to what he was trying to justify within his own regime. I mean, it.
Well, they may have tried to justify it on that means, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you can't justify what Hitler did under any religion.
I mean, it's so true. So true. And it really does, human beings on this planet are so much more malleable than they think they are. They're so much more eager to follow somebody than they are to think for themselves. They're so much more comfortable in looking to others to seek guidance than they are to have the self and intuition, to self-knowledge, knowing thyself, to make their own decisions. There's way too many people on the planet who lack self-empowerment and their ability to do critical thinking and make their own decisions. And, it's only getting worse with social media. It's only getting worse with how toxic even our political system has gotten. It is just getting so this toxic. Red shirt.
It's ridiculous.
It's scary. The red shirt, blue shirt game is like, you understand it anymore. It's like, if you were to launch yourself 30,000 feet into the air and look down upon human behavior at this time in the year of 2024, you would look at our behavior and think we are completely insane with how we approach society, with how we approach our systems of government, with how we approach our international relationship, our borders, our economy, name it. It's scary. Dystopian, almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it harkens back to you talking about not thinking for yourself. That's one of the ways, in my opinion, that mankind is created in the image of God. We're given free will.
We are.
The materialist says there is no free will. They have to say that, because if our minds and our souls and our cognitive functions are all a part of the biochemical world, and we're nothing more than biochemical reactions, chemicals don't have free will. They just don't. And so the logical conclusion of the materialist is that there is no free will. And yet they will use their free will to try to convince us that there is no free will. So I think you're right. People need to think for themselves. And that's why, again, I do not think that Christianity, because that's where I come from, I don't think Christianity should be blind. if I believe what I believe because my mother and dad believed it, that makes me no different than anybody else. I haven't thought it through. Whether I be Christian, whether I be Muslim, whether I be Hindu, whether I be Jewish, you name it, or atheist for that matter. If I'm an atheist, because that's what I was taught and that's what I believe, because you haven't thought it through either. Part of my book is for people to think about that. Just because you were brought up not believing in God, look at the evidence for it. Paul said in the Roman letter that mankind is without excuse when it comes to the belief in a God, because his evidence is abundant. Just look at the heavens, look at the stars and the galaxies and the nebula and everything else that we're discovering with the Webb telescope and so on. There's order to it, and there is rationality behind it. And I believe that points to an intellect. That intellect, in my view, is God.
I totally understand that. And that leads me to my next question. When you think about how incredibly infinite the universe is, the galaxies, the multitude of planets that we can't even be able to imagine the sheer size and magnitude of what is out there and undiscovered and unknown. How does that fit into your worldview as far as even alien life forms, UFOs? I personally find it to be extremely, even just statistically talking here, let's just talk mathematics, very highly, almost impossible to believe that we are the only beings of intelligence, that we're only beings with any type of technology. In fact, there's probably so many other beings out there that wipe our feet, with the technology they possess. And we are probably looked upon as being very, not very evolved. I mean, we still do things like war. War is like the most ridiculous concept that we humans keep doing, that we can't seem to get a handle on doing anything but fighting for our differences. And I just, we are not a very evolved species. We're just not. No wonder no one's coming to visit us. We blow things up. Our planet. It's just like nuts, Well, we trash our planet. We go through our resources like it's some sort of never-ending, infinite amount of things that we can just completely continue to grow with no repercussions. We've killed off all the other species on the planet except the ones we eat. We're very barbaric.
Yeah,
we are.
We're a barbaric people. We haven't grown. We will with time. The Bible doesn't say that there was not other people created. Now it doesn't say that. So I'm not going to, as a Christian, deny the possibility that there's other civilizations in the universe. However, there's a couple of issues, because I get this question a lot, believe it or not, when I do these podcasts. You're not the first one to bring it up. There's a thing called SETI. I'm sure you've heard of SETI. SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's where, if you ever saw the movie, what was it called, with Jodie Foster?
Contact? Was it Contact? No.
Contact. If you ever saw the movie Contact, it begins where it shows those huge radars pointing to outer space. Well, that was SETI. What were they looking for in the movie Contact? They were looking for a communication signal coming from extraterrestrials. That's what they were looking for. We're still using that. That hasn't gone away. Those radars are still out there, and they're searching for it. To date, I haven't heard anything. Haven't heard anything. Don't mean we won't. But to date, we haven't heard anything. And that brings up something called the Fermi paradox. Have you heard of the Fermi paradox? Well, Enrico Fermi was part of the Los Alamos group, brilliant physicist, and he postulated a paradox. And let me just briefly tell you what that was. There's billions of stars in our Milky Way galaxy, for example, and I'm told billions outside our own galaxy. According to the Big Bang and physicists, some of those stars are much, much, much older than our star by billions of years. And so you've alluded to already, you would expect, if there are civilizations out there, then there are civilizations that have existed long before mankind. We've only been on there a few million years, comparatively speaking. So the paradox that Fermi reasoned was that if these civilizations that are billions of years older than us exist, surely they've developed technology that's far superior to ours. That would only make sense, like you've already stated. That technology would probably also include extraterrestrial travel and extraterrestrial communication. Question: why haven't they spoken to us already? That's the Fermi paradox. And so that's what I have problem with UFOs. I love UFOs. I grew up a science fiction nut. I love reading science fiction. Robert Heinlein's Strangers in a Strange Land. I love that. On Isaac Asimov. I love that. And I want to believe that. But he does bring up a good point, Fermi does. And that is if there are ancient civilizations that have existed long before we have, and most likely, and you would expect, have technology that we don't have, why in the world haven't we heard from them yet? Now, I admit, they're seeing UFOs out there, and I don't know what those are. I don't know what those are. By definition, UFO just means they're unidentified. They're unidentified. Now, they call them other things now, but they're unidentified objects, and even the government seems to be saying that to us as well. But why haven't those objects tried to communicate with us? Maybe they have, and we don't know it.
I mean, there's thousands of people a year that claim that they've been abducted. There's so much non-mainstream evidence to support that actually aliens are interacting with humans on a regular basis, especially in places like Alaska. The Skinwalker Ranch, you're hearing ex-government officials come out and say, yeah, there's an underground base and we have aliens down there and we work with them. There's all of this leaky alien. You could call conspiracy theory for sure, but nevertheless, you do have ex-government officials. Many people have said, I was abducted. This is where they took me. This is what they did. This is what they told me. Now, do these people get laughed at and are not accepted, and scientists would brush them off and say it is they ate something that knocked their biological chemistry off and their brain is capable of manufacturing amazing things, which maybe is true. But when you have that many people, and there are thousands of them coming out and saying, I was taken, I was abducted, this is what happened. You see mutilated cattle all over Arizona in ways that human beings don't even have the capacity to mutilate them. There is just an absorbent amount of not backed up, couldn't scientifically say it's accurate. However, when there is that much talk, conspiracy, and for years, this is not a new phenomenon. This is an old phenomenon that is becoming more and more prevalent. More and more people are coming out with these fantastical stories of being abducted by other species. You even have channelers that channel other entities. So just to give you a little insight on where I'm at in my spiritual journey of things, this is kind of how I'm feeling about my worldview currently. I feel a lot of our world has a lot to do with energy, vibration, and resonance. And I believe that what you're vibrating with, what you're resonating with, is what the universe is going to bring into your reality. I feel that there is absolutely a creator. I believe that we were created. I believe that it is created to such a magnificent way that you couldn't possibly say anything other than intelligent design is behind it. I just feel like that creator is much less a entity that needs to be obeyed, glorified, worshipped, has wrath, is judging us, sin. We're all sinners here trying to get. I believe it's less of that and more. We're all love. We are beings of light. We are love. We are here to have compassion. We are all fellow travelers to the grave. When we go back to a place of love. And that love, that creator, that is God for me. That is where I'm I believe less in a Bible that was put together by man, that was that has been used to propagate all things from, you talk about slavery a lot in your book, and about how good men with good hearts, God love, were able to step forward at a time where slavery was the rule, slavery was the norm, and
That's
slavery
right.
was accepted in the Bible. And you talk very deeply and profoundly about men that knew that that was not what God, the creator, the all, the everything, intended by the Bible or wanted for humanity. And I believe and align with that as well. We are all here to love, to embrace, to understand that we are here for a sole purpose, and that is to understand and allow everyone's perspective. Everyone is on their own journey here. It is not my business to tell somebody else what their journey is or how they should feel or what they should think. It is their journey. And I am under the impression you may or may not have the kind of journey that's going to lead you to awaken. And when I mean awaken, I mean understand who you are and understand that you are a being of light, that God is within, that if you look within, you will find who you are. And it's just a matter.
No, but you would have to admit though, there's also evil in the world too. It ain't all just love and glorifying God and that sort of thing. So there's evil, there's unspeakable evil in the world. And
when you say evil, when you say evil, what, I guess my question is, do you mean men behaving in disgusting, and I say men just because it's usually men. I don't mean that against men at all. People, humans, I guess you could say, behaving in irrefutably disgusting way.
Yeah, in an immoral way. In an immoral way. So someone that would take someone else's life, that would probably be the height of evil. Okay, or torture, or do something to a small child. You know, like if I walked up on a street and I saw a man in a suit and a young woman has a young child has a ice cream in their hand, and he goes up and takes that ice cream away and throws it away. I mean, you don't have to define evil to me. I just saw it. It's an evil thing to do. Unless there's something in the backstory that I don't know about.
There always is.
But there always is. But no, there's evil, and I don't think there's any denying that. Now, the question that a lot of people would ask, well, why would God create evil? He didn't create evil, in my opinion. I think evil is a result of free will. We go back to that topic again. We're given free will. And yes, I differ from you in that I do believe there's such a thing as sin. And it's sin that separates us from God. Now, the good thing is it doesn't have to continue to separate us from God, because we have someone that came on this earth that went to his death willingly and then was resurrected 3 days later to give proof of his deity, to be able to absolve that sin from us. But to deny that there is, and I don't think you are, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here, but to deny that there's evil is to really be blind, because there's some bad actors in the world, that's for sure. And we're seeing evidence of that now.
I agree. There are so many bad actors in the world, and I think evil exists in all kinds of ways. And I also think that the human behavior is extremely complex, and I don't think people are born evil. I think people could be born with chemical imbalances, and I think they could be born with nervous disorders, and I think they could be born with maybe not having the full capacities as maybe somebody else with a better set of genes. I believe that. However, I do believe that we are very much a product of what we endure in this lifetime. And I do believe people cannot oversimplify evil behavior, as far as even taking your example of taking the ice cream and shoving it down some kid's throat. That's evil. You're right. It is evil. But I guarantee you that dude has had abuse in his life. It has brought up under circumstances that you and I maybe could never have understood. He may have been tortured himself by his own parents. He may have, I mean, people don't just do things.
Or he made his like kids.
Or there's so many, and there's so many reasons why we end up being the way we are. There's reasons why we end up being who we are. There are people out there living with such lack. They live in survival mode. They're not thinking, they're reacting to their emotions. I talk about that a lot on my podcast too, that people need to start understanding that their emotions are energy and they affect their mental well-being. They affect the people around them. They affect their outer world. And people don't understand the power of emotions and how it can contribute to our own negative behavior because we are not thinking, we react. I hate that. I love that. That sucks. Scrolling, not thinking. There's no thinking, just reacting to whatever is hitting us in the moment, which is why advertising is a multi-billion-dollar thing because we react to things. Ooh, colors. Ooh, look at that. I'm hungry now. Ooh, I hate that. It is not something that is, I don't care what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're watching. If you are not actively, consciously thinking about what you're ingesting by somebody else, whether it's through the screen or through somebody talking to you, you are being programmed in some way that you're not aware of. It's just human nature. It's how they know how to make us all tick. It's why this division and conquer works so well. It's why our instinct to be tribal is so there. It is part of our fallible human self. And people are not born evil. People endure so much atrocity and lack, and they go into survival mode. What I do for a living is I work in film and television. I'm an assistant director. I work on movie sets. I go all over this country. I'm in ghettos. I've shot at NASA. I've shot on top of the Sears building. I go into places and see people and things that nobody else gets to do. It's part of the plus of being in the movie industry. And what I have done is I have shot all over this country. And I go into rural neighborhoods and I go into inner cities and shoot in ghettos. And I understand so much better about how they live. You want to talk about some desperate people with mental unwellness just by the very shape of what is around them every day? Going into a ghetto that is a public, low rent, very impoverished apartment and shooting in their hallways and looking into their homes and understanding they're dirty. There's feces everywhere. There's chains everywhere. Their lack of education. If you think people are capable of doing anything other than instinctual stuff, animalistic almost, of stealing, taking what's not theirs, stabbing somebody. I mean, I would talk to a cop in Detroit and they...
I don't buy that. I don't buy that premise whatsoever.
I've lived it.
I believe there are people, and I didn't grow up in a rich neighborhood. I can tell you that right now. I was not born. Yeah, you probably didn't either. People still have choices. Now, I agree with you. People aren't born bad. You're not born bad. I agree with that. And we are influenced by the things around us. There's no doubt about that. But we still have the capacity, thank goodness, to change. And I think we have the capacity to make choices between right and wrong. And there's some things there's no justification for. Mass murdering people, there's no justification for that. I don't care how they were brought.
I'm not justifying it. My point is, you can't just look at it as sheer evil. You also have to understand that person has probably endured evil. It is not so simple as to say they're evil and I'm good. That's it's a third, 3D polarity, good, bad, black, white, up, down. It's an oversimplification of who we are. And in order to understand human behavior, you really do have to look at all of human behavior, and to break it down in such simplistic terms as he's evil and I'm good is just oversimplifying a huge
let's take
problem.
the word I'm good or I'm evil out of it. let's take the word I'm good, I'm evil out of it. Let's just talk about the behavior itself. I can identify that behavior. I can identify it. When someone, mutilates a child, I can identify that behavior as bad behavior. Take the word that person being evil, that person being good out of the equation. Let's just look at the behavior itself. People are not born good either. They're not born bad. They're not born good either in either way. But we are born, one more time, I too believe that we are born with free will. We are born with the capacity to change. And I think that's a fantastic capacity that we have, the ability to change. And
I don't think humans are capable of changing on our own, though. I mean, even myself. Let's just talk about
we need help. I agree with you.
Well, that's my point, is that the level of expectation, and let's not talk. When I'm talking about somebody, doing things that you would consider evil or you consider unmoral or immoral or whatever. I mean, you're bringing up the most baseless, 0.0004% of the population mutilates children. Like, this is such a small, tiny, hardly, rarely ever happens, like mutilating a child. Like, that's just,
but it does
100%, and it's evil. But statistically, that's not what the massive amounts of people that would be considered evil or immoral are doing. They're doing things like selling drugs, stealing, doing things that you would say are bad, evil, immoral, but they're doing it because they are been in situations in which they don't feel like they have choices. They live in despair. They live in lack. They are not educated. They're not even thoughtful enough to be able to climb themselves out of their things. So they do things in order to survive. And that is my point. I mean, that's really the basic of my point, is that we need to, a lot of people talk about people that are doing criminality and they're bad and they need to change and they need to make different choices. That's so easy for somebody like you and I, who live in nice homes and have had beautiful careers and a wonderful upbringing, and most of your siblings are doctors. I know for me, I can't even imagine living the type of life where I have had to fight every day to survive, where I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, where I was abused, where I was not educated, where I didn't feel like I have any other capacity, where my self-esteem was so in the toilet that I had to degrade myself to even go out, sell my body, steal, do terrible things, bring somebody else into sex trafficking because somebody else is abusing me. That is just my point. My point is this. There are so many reasons why people end up in the situations that they end up. And unless you are open and able to understand, your perspective is completely different, and you probably can't even imagine what other people's lives are. And going back to the movie industry, the reason why I feel like I've had a peek into that is because I have been in so many different places in this country, in overseas, where it has exposed me to a level of human destitute that I would not have otherwise ever been exposed to. Like, wow, I would not have ever thought people actually live like this. And they do. And it's why you see so many people mentally unwell, doing the things that you would consider immoral or evil. It is a product of the terrible situation they find themselves, where they don't have light, where they don't have anyone that's going to help them, where they are, and I'm not saying people don't have the responsibility to take care of their own lives, but when you are so ill-educated, when you are so not guided, when you are surrounded by a situation that you can't get out of, I don't condone it. I understand it. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not that kind of guru, but I understand why people, especially in this day where you have people working 3 jobs just to barely make ends meet, where you have an egregiously rich, small, tiny population out there that are completely addicted to their materialism, their luxury, their wealth, and it separates you from your ability to identify with your fellow man and have any compassion for them. It is a situation where I don't condone it, and I do think it's evil, but I understand much better by getting a sneak peek in what these people's daily lives are like. And I can't even imagine being in that situation. And I would just hope that people out there, before they look at us, somebody else and say, you're evil, you can make better choices, that you have to actually understand the complexity of where somebody else may have been swimming for 30 years. End scene. That's all.
Well, I agree with you, but that's where love comes
Yes.
in. You know,
Yes.
God is love. We are love. We got to love. We've got to love our fellow
Yes.
man, and we shouldn't. We should be compassionate to
Yes.
those people. And I've seen the things you've seen too. Maybe not to the extreme you have, but I certainly have seen my share of things that you can understand why people might act in a certain way when they're involved in a certain situation. But they have the ability to change, and that's the good thing.
You know, it's one of the things that still turns me off religion is the judgment. There is this self-righteousness within many religions, churches, that I am good, I'm close to God, I am almost superior to you because you make those decisions and I am godly and you are not.
No, it shouldn't be that way.
I
No,
agree.
it shouldn't be that way. I
But
agree
there
with you.
is that thread, this self-righteousness that people have when they feel that they're good church-going people and that others are not.
No,
It's a
in the end, we're all unprofitable servants. Where none of us are justified by ourselves. I don't believe that for a minute. We're not superior. A Christian or any other religion is not superior to anyone else. But we are all unprofitable servants. And my purpose in that book is to try to show that our purpose in life, Christians, we should not just be looking to ourselves. We should be looking to the world. We should be ready to help all of our fellow man. And that's one of the purposes that we're put here on. Give glory to God, in my opinion, but also to help our fellow man, to do unto others, the golden rule, one more time, to do unto others as I would have someone do to me. How much simpler can it get? And if we all behave that way, it would be a better world. I believe you'd agree with that. I
absolutely agree with that. And, the golden rule is the one running thread between all of the religions out there. You find it in every religious book. It's said in different ways, but it is the same exact meaning, that love yourself as you would love others as you would love yourself, treat others as you would have yourself be treated. It is in every single religion book out there.
It is, but there's a little bit of difference. Christianity also, Christ said, not only do we love our neighbors, but we're to love our enemies. Those are people that hate us, people that want us to die. I mean, we're to love those people. And that's a hard one. It's an extremely hard thing to do, but yet it's a commandment. We are to love not only my family and so on, but we're to love our enemies. And other religions don't say that. It's a little bit of a difference.
I can see that. I also think that, the war between good and evil is I think only can be fought with love. If you're going to hate on somebody for what they believe, if you're going to hate on somebody for what they do, if you're going to hate on somebody or be violent against somebody because they are doing something that you feel is immoral or evil, I think real change only comes from loving somebody. I think you can love somebody, and I think they have the absolute ability to change. But if you think you can put somebody in prison and change them, if you think you can penalize somebody and change them, if you think you can overpower somebody, it's not going to do it. You have to
I agree with you.
Approach things with love. That is the only thing that melts away everything else, in my opinion.
I totally agree with you.
I loved our conversation. We're coming up on an hour, but you and I don't align on everything, but I love your perspective. I'm open to it. I am still on my own spiritual journey. I'm still investigating. I'm still learning, and I'm still open to any and all perspectives. And I appreciate you bringing your perspective and your book called Our Purpose-Driven God. I highly recommend people pick it up. It is a great read. I enjoyed it. There's lots of quotes in there. There's different perspectives, and it has a lot of validity as to why we're all here and what we're doing. And Dr. Kirkwood, my fellow Church of Christ member.
Thank you. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, but in fact, I don't think I've had an interviewer yet that said I agreed with everything in that book or everything that you believe. That would be kind of naive on my part to even expect that. But I appreciate the fact that you did read it, because, and I can tell you read it by the questions you asked. But some of my interviewers, I can tell either scanned through it or only read my press release and didn't read the book itself. But, it's an answer for what I believe. And that's all anyone can ask, isn't it? Is to give an answer for what you believe. You've done a good job giving me an answer to what you believe. You know what? We're still on that spiritual journey.
Yes, we are.
I'm on it too. If I'm looking at the evidence, if evidence points me in a different direction, I'm ready to accept it. I'm not ready to blindly go through life, just believing what I believe because that's what I was taught or whatever. But I'm ready to look at the evidence, and I hope that's what my book tries to show. Just show me the evidence, and then let me make an informed decision instead of being told that X, Y, or Z is true without examining it. Because what I found in my studies, my fellow medical students and interns and residents and so on, as well as other people for that matter, most of, like Darwin, for example, that was accepted because they were taught that. Not because they investigated it to see whether or not it was true or not. And that's where we are now in our scientific community. But I do believe there's a kink in the armor and it is changing. So all I'm asking people to do, read my book, see if it makes sense. And if they've got disagreements with me and they can be cordial about it, then send me an email at bokirkwood@aol.com. I'm more than happy to answer any emails and try to do the best I can. Maybe I didn't explain something the way I needed to in the book, but I'll be glad to answer those. But I don't appreciate people being mean about it, because I've had some that have just been mean. That's not the purpose.
This idea that everyone in the world should have the same exact opinion, and there cannot be any diverse opinions out there. And if you don't believe like me, you're not one of me, has really been such a disservice to our ability to love, communicate, and respect each other. There's no level of respect for each other out there. Like, grow up, gang. Not everyone is going to think and behave and act the way you do. I don't know why this is a thread within our consciousness now, where if you don't think like me, somehow I have to not like you or be rude or disrespect you. It's like, I don't know. High school is reigning forever. Like, there's no adults in the room anymore. I don't understand. I have no idea. Like,
I totally agree with you.
And also on the science note, I will just agree with you as well, in the fact that science is now, we are pre-programmed and instructed to have a certain line of thought, and there's no independent thinking in science anymore. It is dictated to us and programmed to us, and they're expected to spit it out. And that is dangerous in itself, guys. So, let's hope we all continue to evolve, continue to respect each other, and continue to understand that the world is full of diversity. And that's what makes the world beautiful, is our diversity, our opinions, our discussions are profound. And I really enjoyed our discussion. I would love to have you back on. I love to discuss religion, especially with somebody who's from the Church of Christ.
Well, as you can tell, I do like talking about this stuff.
I'm all in, Dr. Kirkwood. I am all in. I appreciate your perspective. I respect it, and I'd love to have you back on the show. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
Okay, thank you. Love to do it.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there with Dr. Kirkwood. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Oh, and by the way, we didn't see him on the show. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the show. We had technical difficulties, gang. So we couldn't get his camera to work. That is the only reason why you're not seeing his face. But you do see a very beautiful picture of his book that I want you to go out and buy. You can get it on Amazon, right, Dr. Kirkwood? Is that where?
Right. On Noble, a lot of different
Okay.
platforms.
Alrighty, guys. That is a wrap on this episode of Fate. We will see you next week. Thank you to Dr. Kirkwood, and journey well, everyone. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. That is a wrap on A Purpose-Driven God by Dr. Bo Kirkwood. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation. I love talking to people that have a different perspective than me. And although Dr. Kirkwood and I did not align on a lot, we aligned on enough. I mean, I love that he was Church of Christ and I was brought up Church of Christ. It really informed a lot of his foundations and his religion. And I loved that we were able to have a mutual discussion without getting defensive. I never felt defensive. I never felt he was getting defensive. And I felt like he enjoyed my perspective. I certainly enjoyed his. And I think it's okay to disagree about religion. It's okay to disagree about the nature of reality. Not everyone is going to feel like I do. I certainly don't think everybody out there in the audience land feels like I do. But I do hope that I give you enough perspectives to just keep opening your mind to other ways of being, even when it comes to evolution, even when it comes to what we call settled science in today's society. I think that there is much we don't know. I don't think we have an entire handle on the history of who we are. I never said this to Dr. Kirkwood, but I believe that we are much more powerful beings than what he would give us credit for. I think that we are capable of co-creating our reality. I do believe that frequency, vibration, resonance is the song of the universe, and if we can tap into that, we can change many things about our outer world. But I do encourage you to pick up the book. It is heavily science-based. He does a great job of illustrating how beautifully designed our natural world is and how beautifully designed the human body is. I mean, everything from our chemical makeup to physics to our foundations in mathematics can be chalked up to a intelligent design. And I agree. I do think the earth, the universe, everything within is created through an intelligent design. There is just no way that everything would not work so beautifully if it weren't such. But I believe that creator is a little bit different than what he believes. I am not somebody that is aligns very much with the Bible. I believe the Bible was written by man. I believe man is fallible. I believe that a lot of the Bible is maybe been manipulated in order to construct a society that obeys, that is fearful, that is not thinking for themselves, but looking to someone else for help, looking to something outside of ourselves for guidance, and instills this fear of going to hell, that we are just sinners. I think that it is a much more complex reality in which we're swimming in, that good and evil and sinners and judgment. And not to say that there's not evil. I do believe that there's evil. I just believe that it is um, a reaction to what we become as we navigate this life, and what we become, who we're exposed to, what we learn, how we learn, all of it plays into who we become. The world is a little bit of a stage. We come we all come down here knowing that we're going to perform a certain role and encounter certain people and experience certain things in order to evolve and learn and grow and become a deeper, more compassionate, more spiritual person. We didn't get into reincarnation. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more into that. I wonder what his thoughts would have been on reincarnation, because I do believe that we do go more than one round in this 3D reality. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do me a favor. Share, like, support. I am on Instagram. It's F.A.T.E. podcast on Instagram. Follow the show. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. It'll be interesting when it airs. I thought it was a very interesting discussion. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify and you want to come see me on my YouTube channel, it's at F.A.T.E. channel, and that is F.A.T.E. Tell a friend about the show, support the show, spread the love. I would love to reach as many people as I possibly can through this podcast, and I need your help. So if you've been listening to the show and you love what I'm doing here, let somebody know, subscribe, tell a friend, share, help me out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we will see you next week. I hope you journey well, and welcome to your fate, everyone. I'll see you later.